We have risen from the ashes to school the masses. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Scholars of Wrestling Show. I am your man behind the microphone, Scholar Jeff. Joining us this week is the undisputed scholar himself. You know him, you love him. He is Scholar Tarek. Scholar Tarek, how are we doing tonight?
I am doing absolutely wonderful. I am very excited. It's Halloween weekend, one of my favorite holidays of the year. And to be perfectly honest, even though I'm wearing like a happy Halloween shirt, I kind of feel underdressed on this one. So you can go ahead and introduce Brian. I'll be right back.
Okay, that's certainly a unique segue. So yeah, without further ado, the one and only Scholar Brian also joining us this week. Scholar Brian, how are you doing this evening, sir?
I am doing okay. It's just I'm outside in the car in the rain, so I'm not in the Halloween spirit as say whatever that is.
The world may never know.
I'm a caveman.
Of course you are.
but
And don't worry, I'm actually going to wear this for the rest of the show, except for the closing. That'll actually take this mask off. But for that, I'll wear this for the rest of the show because someone's got to get the Halloween spirit on this episode.
Oh, we'll absolutely get there ourselves. I should have brought my costume. But anyway, before we go any further, speaking of costumes, I think the Elite have officially won Halloween for the wrestling world.
Nope.
No?
Hangman Page.
Oh, yes,
won.
Of course.
Oh, absolutely.
Has won costume. He's won GIF of the year. That's just that GIF of him taking off the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man mask with his angry constipation face. That's it.
All right. Well, they at least had a fun entrance.
They did.
I gotta give them that.
Very unique theme. Very unique theme song.
Oh yeah, that was a ton of fun. But anyway, we got our treats out of the way. Now it's time to get to the tricks in a little segment we like to call the Backstage News.
Indeed, we shall go ahead again and peek behind that curtain and check in on a little
Backstage
news.
News.
Yeah.
Interfering sounds, meh. Yeah, Scholar Brian, it sounds like you've got some background noise interfering there. So we'll just have to roll it until that gets fixed. In the meantime, we couldn't go any further without the wrap-up of a little series that we like to call Dark Side of the Ring. Season 3 has just officially wrapped up. Honestly, I have been enjoying every single episode of it. As you, Scholar Tarek, have gotten back to me, you have told me that you have not seen too much of Season 3. Is that correct?
That is correct. The only episode of this season that I actually sat down and watched entirely was the Plane Ride from Hell episode. I actually don't even really know like the rundown of this season. You told me before we started recording that the finale was the steroid trials. So that actually intrigued me enough that I'm like, oh, I actually may go out of my way to actually watch that one. Just to see how, I guess more just, I want to see the trash talking of Vince McMahon, of people of Vince McMahon, of just how these trials went.
You know, I gotta say, it really wasn't nearly as derogatory as you were probably thinking. There was actually a lot of like, oh yeah, not a lot of people actually ended up throwing him under the bus. A lot of it ended up being talking to Vince McMahon's personal lawyer, which was actually a really interesting take on the whole matter, which I never expected to ever see.
Oh,
Probably why they saved it for last.
Mm-hmm.
I have to admit, again, just as a quick refresher to anyone who may not be initiated, this was actually part 2 of season 3. It wasn't its own complete season. So you kick things off with the plane ride from hell, but you also got one on Luna Vachon, which went into more detail about her history of mental illness and all of her family craziness and all that.
I did see clips of that one, actually.
Yes. You got to see Onita's FMW, which was every clip of Mick Foley and Terry Funk and Sabu all going for Japanese death matches. That was all.
That was definitely
that was all FMW.
That one's definitely for you.
Was it Nick Gage? Wasn't Nick Gage the on this part of season 3 too?
Actually, Nick Gage was on the first part of season 3.
Oh, he was.
Yeah, he was. That was already done. There was also the story of Johnny K9, who I didn't even know who he was at the time. He was a lesser known guy way before my time, way before I started watching WWF at the time. So I never really knew his story. He just that was just wild, but it didn't really have the same impact as some of the others. And then there was XPW and just the story of Rob Black and everything that he did. Just when I thought the wrestling world couldn't get any sleazier, it's like it's half of what they said didn't even seem real. Like it was like half the time I was just looking at the show, I was just like, why? Just why?
I guess I gotta look into that one if that one gets a cringe reaction from you.
I'll tell you what, it's like the edgiest underground video from the 90s, early 2000s that one guy who used to like never take a shower every 2 days, like used to love wrestling, used to carry with him. Like everything like XPW related, like it's got like it's almost like you can smell it coming off of the TV screen. It was like, no, why? No, why? No.
I never knew much about XPW, but I heard a lot about Rob Black. So and there was also Chris Canyon, right?
There was Chris Canyon,
a Canyon,
yes.
yeah.
I don't know why I didn't write that down. That one was actually one of the more moving ones. Where he seems like one of those figures who didn't get their flowers when they were alive, and they really should have. That one, the only problem I think I've heard with that episode was that the Young Bucks do make a appearance on it. Same thing with Brian Cage. So some people were saying like, oh, this is just a hit piece from AEW and yada yada. Like, no, it was very fair and very respectful.
You also had John Cena on it. So,
oh yeah, briefly, and Ric Flair.
Yeah, so that's just people talking out of their ass again. That's it.
Yeah, but this doesn't have any water. Yeah,
the big one that everybody talked about from this season, and it actually probably has and will cost people jobs, is the one we've talked about, the plane ride from hell.
It was crazy how much detail that came out of that. Like, just kind of just jaw dropping, even though like we had Ric Flair post a couple of statements after that episode, just denying all the claims that were made. And
because it's like we knew about Brock Lesnar and Mr. Perfect. We knew about
that one.
We knew about that from the jump, from when it actually happened. But all the shit that came out.
The one that really shocked me the most was the story with Dustin Reynolds.
Yeah.
Goldust.
Honestly, I wish I could say I was more shocked by that one, but if I remember the timeline, that's the supposed timeline of his sobriety, that came at a point where he was still very much messed up, and it wasn't too long before after their divorce. Like I can, as much as again, as sad as it is, I can definitely see him very easily not being at his best and not being in that mentality of just like the same sort of boys club mentality that seemed to be going on at that time.
Yeah, it's
Does that
like
make sense?
I could see Dustin Runnels knowing what I know. I could see Scott Hall knowing what I know. I could see Ric Flair knowing what I know. But the thing for me was Tommy Dreamer going full boys will be boys, and it's like.
Oh
Did
boy,
you
do I have
think-
opinions about that.
And
It's
that
like-
came to bite him in the butt.
It's like, did you think that people were actually going to watch that and let that go? Are you out of your damn
I think, yeah, this whole thing, again, this is, I have to admit, this is going to be bit of a controversial take on this, but I feel like enough time has passed where people have sort of calmed down a little bit, that this, more so than almost any other episode of Dark Side of the Ring in any season, I feel like this is one of those cases where the people watching are paying way more attention to what was said than actually what we were being shown. Like, let's be real. If we're honest with ourselves, I think we've all at certain points let certain things slide because we're fans of somebody. Like, we want to give someone the benefit of the doubt. Like, okay, maybe it didn't quite happen that way. Maybe it wasn't so bad. I've seen it happen with Chris Benoit, like days after the incident. Just people trying to come to terms with what happened and what really went down. When we saw Tommy Dreamer's interview, we as people watching at home, we had the luxury of seeing the other person's story, that woman's story. Tommy Dreamer, it seems, did not. He's just going off of hearsay and rumors, just like we all did at the time. Because let's be real, how long was it at the time? Did anyone really give a rip about the plane ride from hell? Like, we just heard some stories third hand.
Well, it's like
crazy,
the only reason people cared about it was because Mr. Perfect got fired because of it.
Yeah, but even then, like, when I'm assuming we were all watching at the time, when you saw and heard things come out after the plane ride from hell, what was your immediate reaction? Were you really shocked by what you heard, or was it just like, okay, that's a crazy story, moving on? What was your reaction?
Are we talking about when it first came out?
Yeah,
or
when the stories first started circulating?
And when the stories first started circulating, I was like, well, apparently something happened. They didn't go into details about what happened on the plane, but they were like, something happened with Brock Lesnar, something happened with Mr. Perfect. Mr. Perfect was released from the company basically immediately from that. So I was like, okay, obviously whatever Mr. Perfect did on the plane was bad enough to get him legit blacklisted from everything after that. And that probably didn't help with his death, probably like 6 months later?
About, yeah.
6 months, 6 months to a year later. So that probably didn't help. But after that, it kind of just, I was like, okay, that's pretty much it, because they didn't let any of the details about the Ric Flair stuff, the Scott Hall stuff, the Dustin Runnels stuff, the whatever.
Who was it that got the haircut?
Whatever happens with those flight attendants.
Yeah, the haircut, I believe, was Michael Hayes. I think
That's
X-Pac
right. Yeah,
did
that was
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, X-Pac cut Michael Hayes' hair.
Yeah.
I believe. And that was more like a practical joke than anything else. So nobody really.
I just remember that being brought up. But when it initially happened all those years ago, the only thing that I ever really heard from it was the Mr. Perfect Brock Lesnar fight. I actually didn't hear, because like Brian said, there were no details that were released other than just it was a drunk fight that almost led to them accidentally opening the airplane door that just made them lose, that could possibly have them lose cabin pressure. That's the only thing I actually remember firmly hearing about from that plane ride. And then this episode came on and we get more details, and I'm just going, Jesus Christ.
And the real issue is when this episode came out, because look, I understand completely what you're saying about Tommy Dreamer, but in the culture that we live in now, okay, when all this information comes out for the first time, and then you have a guy who everybody would normally respect suddenly comes on the screen and says, "Boys will be boys." Okay, after the way that they cut this episode, okay, there was no way that Tommy Dreamer was going to come out of this looking good.
Yeah, with the way they cut it, I'm convinced they typically, I feel like the ring of the Dark Side of the Ring guys normally do as fair job as can be expected given the circumstances and some of these stories. In this case, I really do feel like they threw Tommy Dreamer under the bus. They did.
I agree.
Like the only thing he's guilty of is having a bad take, a very bad take.
They threw him under the bus, but also, okay, Tommy Dreamer should know the culture that we live in.
Except I don't think he really did. Like, and he was so in that wrestling bubble that.
I'm not saying back then. I'm saying.
Oh no, I'm saying right now.
If he doesn't know, if he really doesn't know what culture we live in, then he needs to get out from under a rock, bro.
And I think that's honestly a portion of the whole overarching story of this episode. That's why I believe they included all that stuff about Brock Lesnar exposing himself to Terry Runnels and all that. That whole "don't sell it" mentality of just suck it up. This is just the way life is. Just like that's the whole big thing now. Like let's face it. I don't think anyone here is going to get punished. Brock Lesnar isn't going to get punished. He's not. Ric Flair is barely going to get any blowback because he's not really doing anything anymore.
Well, he did get erased, like his woos from the WWE intros, and just the response on that is they're definitely cut. They definitely erased him. Yeah, WWE definitely erased what they have on what they have on Ric Flair in like today's product. Like I said, they're cutting him out of the intro and cutting out his woos. Yeah.
But he's also not going to be impacted by that financially either.
But that also could be because they released him and he's not technically with the company anymore. And normally
they cut the commercials that he was in. The
Car Shield commercials. I don't think anyone's really missing those.
I'm just saying I'm not saying anyone's going to miss anything from that. I'm just saying he's definitely getting repercussions of from that episode. His deals are definitely getting cut. He's definitely getting cut from, at least in the WWE side. I don't know if they'll do anything else for the rest of the wrestling world.
And they only cut those Car Shield commercials for like 2 days, and then they started up again.
Did they? Because I haven't seen them since.
I didn't notice they came back, but yeah, that sort of proves my point here that like I don't think anyone is going to be facing any really serious repercussions.
Except I feel like the harshest because he's still suspended.
Yeah, and I feel like he was not that he's innocent, but he was the most innocent one out of all of them. Like he just, again, he had a bad opinion. He didn't actually do any of this stuff, and this is really some serious stuff. So
Yeah,
I'm like,
it's
and
just
and he actually did just come back to Busted Open Radio like just this week, once the heat died down. I'm like, I think that's my main point with this, and don't think I'm defending Tommy Dreamer's comments. Again, obviously he's wrong, but I just can't shake this thing where the person who the people who deserve the most blowback from this and the worst and the most bad PR just aren't going to get it, and that one aggravates me. It really does.
yeah, and that's just the culture that we live in today. It's more what you say than what you do that gets people the most angry.
Yeah, and
So
that doesn't sit well with me. That it makes me genuinely concerned that stuff like this is going to happen again, where you just say the right things, say the right passwords, but your heart never changes. That is what genuinely concerns me. But
and it's
time will tell.
possible that that's the cautionary tale of that episode. It's all about the culture that we're in right now will not allow the what took place on that plane ride and the opinions of those who were on that plane ride. They will not allow those to be addressed anymore. Like you can't do or say any of that anymore. And that was just the episode. That was the cautionary tale of that episode. Like that mindset. That mindset. You can't have that anymore.
It's a different world, even in the wrestling world. It's when it comes to the backstage stuff, like with Undertaker and the Mark Calloway in the past saying, "Oh, we always had knives, we always had weapons backstage."
We didn't have video games. We had real men with knives and alcohol. And
that's right. Yeah, that day
even then
that time is over.
Yeah, even then, again, I'm not going to go into that, but I really do feel like, having heard other people who share a similar viewpoint, I feel like Undertaker was really misunderstood there, or at least misquoted or misunderstood, whatever you want to call it. But again, this is a subject for another time. But I feel like there is something to be said about that mentality, but we must be careful to understand what is really meant and how to preserve the best of that style without regressing into like the whole drugs and debauchery lifestyle. Yeah. I personally think it can be done. I've got some ideas for how it can be done, but again, there's other ways to do it. And that would be a whole other conversation for another time.
Yeah, for me, it's just the people from the last generation need to learn how to speak better. Because whenever they talk, it's not a misquote. That's exactly what he said. But the way that he said it, he's reminiscing about when he was in the backstage area, and the way he said it could possibly be taken as taking a shot at today's locker room. But it's just like they need to learn how to speak better so that people get their point and don't misconstrue it to the fact like, oh, he's saying it was better when there were knives and alcohol in the locker room.
Yeah, that's going to be an art that will have to be revisited, and I think that in the future, as the big shows evolve, there'll be a lot to say and a lot to do in regards to that. But just bringing it full circle before we move on, Dark Side of the Ring, I like that they did not shy away from a lot of the major controversial and really rough stories. Some stories that may not have been the biggest or most notorious ones, with obviously some examples like the steroid trials being mentioned. But I feel like there was a lot of really plainly human stories, gritty and unpolished though they may be. I think like there's a lot of more uncommon stories that were definitely worth a look, and that's one thing that I really took away from this season, just getting a look at not just the darker side but the more unseen stories, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. The main thing about Dark Side of the Ring is that it goes into the underbelly, the stuff that people don't want to talk about the wrestling business. We know that back in the day, the wrestling business was rough. It was not. It was seedy, and it was not the best place to be. The backstage area of locker rooms, and so I like that a group of guys has the balls to actually make documentaries and put this on YouTube TV, and let and actually let people decide what they think about the stuff, actually like get it out there, so that the historians can get the full view of it, and so that the casuals can just be like, look, it's just like anything else. There's bad parts to it and there's good parts to it. You know all the good parts to it. Now we're gonna let you know the bad parts. we're gonna, not everything is sunshine and roses, and that's what Dark Side of the Ring is for. And season 3, it really came into its own. Like season 1 and season 2, they were getting the kinks out. They were working everything out, trying to see how it will work. Season 3, they did a really good job.
Totally agreed. I'm sorry, continue.
It makes me want to ask for you guys, what do you want to see in the next season? Like, is there any particular story
That's
that actually
the big question? That is the big question.
Like,
because after
most
all
likely
3
just like
seasons,
of all the things.
Oh boy, after 3 seasons, I'm trying to think of how many other stories are really left. One thing that just jumps to mind for no real reason at all was I'd like to see a documentary on Pat Patterson, because I know that there was a lot of really crazy rumors going around about him. I know that there was like something about a ring boy scandal and all that. I'm sure that's I'm not sure if Vince McMahon or just someone just was trying to cover something up, or maybe something didn't actually, and then maybe he just got thrown under the bus for being one of the first openly gay men in professional wrestling. Either way, no matter what the truth, I bet there's got to be some sort of story there, just good, bad, or indifferent. I just want someone to dig deep and either expose some hidden crimes and some hidden hurts, or clear the name of an innocent man. Just one of the two is fine with me. I'm sure that there's some other ones, but that's just the first one that comes to mind. Fool, do you have a story in mind that you'd like to see?
I don't think it would be something that would be one of the most like episodes on the level of like the plane ride from hell, but I always remember how the wrestling world affected some of the people who were involved in it. I'm talking about the first season of Tough Enough, and just how that whole experience and bringing it wrestling world into reality TV affected the people involved, especially in the first season. Like we all know the stories of what happened with Maven, like after the whole thing, and then how after when he left, and just how it kind of messed him up a little bit. And it just stems from how future seasons you see, like how Josh Matthews got completely destroyed in that one exhibition match, and just going back to basically the story of just how like that the old guard of the wrestling world treated the younger people going into this business, and just be like, it's not just a tough world of similar to what Triple H said. You basically are leaving your wife, your kids at home, but you're also dealing with like the backstage politics of basically being tossed around and completely and utterly destroyed by these trainers. That's what how Hugh Morris lost his job. That's how people like Hardcore Holly got in trouble.
Hardcore Holly, Daniel Pewter.
Pewter, yeah, exactly. Just
how
how the reality TV affected these people.
Yeah, you don't even have to keep it to just the first season of Tough Enough, just Tough Enough as a whole. They did not respect those people at all. Just like even when they brought the Miz in and he was doing the women's Tough Enough.
When they tore that yeah.
And you could bring that, you could put the Miz in for that whole thing. So it's just like reality TV and wrestling. Bam, there's an episode right there.
All right.
Man, it's really hard to drink water with this mask on. I had to like lift up the upper lip.
Yeah. Well, speaking of stories that we hopefully won't see on Dark Side of the Ring, the biggest breaking news this week in the professional wrestling world was the latest posting from Ring of Honor. Not quite an official press release of sorts, but an announcement released on all of their social media. And I quote, "Throughout the pandemic, our top priority was to keep everyone healthy and safe. And despite not producing any live events over 18 months, we were able to keep everyone fully contracted. We now find ourselves at a time where we need to make changes to our business operations and are planning a pivot for Ring of Honor with a new mission and strategy. The year will culminate with a final battle in December, and we'll be taking the first quarter of 2022 to work internally to reimagine ROH. ROH has the most dedicated fans in the industry, and we appreciate their loyalty and patience as we conceptualize ROH. We anticipate returning to live events in April for the Supercard of Honor with a new fan-focused product and provide a unique experience for wrestling fans." End quote. Now, initially, I was taking this announcement at face value, but in the immediate aftermath, everyone immediately started saying, this is it. This is the end of Ring of Honor. A lot of people are going to be out of their jobs. And it was recently announced that all contracted Ring of Honor wrestlers at the end of the year are going to be released from their contracts, and everyone is basically going to be starting from scratch if Ring of Honor actually, in fact, does not come return at all. Historians have enlightened me to the fact that very similar things were announced about WCW in particular, for instance. And I believe someone made the announcement that Ring of Honor's tape library is actually up for sale right now.
Yep. It says it's up for the highest bidder.
So yes, it's long story short, it's very easy to see that Ring of Honor's future is in flux at best. A lot of people are really speculating what could happen with Ring of Honor. But let me pitch it over to you guys. When you first heard the reactions to, and not even just the reactions, but the announcement as a whole, what did you see first, and what was your initial impressions? How did you feel about it?
At the actual announcement stage, when ROH posted that on Twitter and I saw it, I was just like, all right, they're doing a big WrestlePalooza type show at the end of the year, and then they're gonna go back on hiatus like they've been doing, and it's gonna be like a NXT 2.0 situation. So I'm like, okay, okay, cool, whatever. And then about an hour later is when it hit me like this could be it, because an hour later I get Dave Meltzer and Sean Ross Sapp saying that everyone's going to be released from their contracts at the end of the year. I'm like, well, okay, you can't put on shows with no wrestlers, with no contracted wrestlers. That
At least
you can't do.
Not long-term booking, yeah.
Yeah, you can't do that. So I'm like, okay, well that's where the got to update our business model and that kind of deal do. But how many people do you think they're actually going to get back after they get released from their contracts? They're
That
going to
is a
take
very
the
good
bigger jobs.
question.
They're going to take the bigger jobs elsewhere, because you've got guys there who are going to get offers. Jonathan Gresham gonna get an offer. all of their big name guys are gonna get offers, and that's the problem. And the problem now with ROH is that their big name guys are not what their big name guys used to be. Okay, they were on the downswing before the pandemic even happened. Okay,
right.
so it's one of the so it's just one of those. Now I'm on the boat. Like, look, it I don't know if it's the end, but it ain't looking good.
Right. Let's pitch it over to you, Tarek. What was your original reaction to the announcement as you heard it, and what'd you take from that initially?
Initially, I didn't realize what was going on, but I did get a tweet from Sean Ross Sapp just basically saying that Ring of Honor cut all their wrestlers, and honestly, I thought that was a joke. I thought that was just basically them doing like a WWE's like, oh, they're trying to one up WWE type of deal. But then when I look into it, I realized, oh wait, this isn't a joke. This is actually happening, and hearing what's going on with Ring of Honor, and I'm just like, holy shit, what the hell is going on here? And then reading all the details about it, and just thinking and seeing what this company did during their time during the pandemic, and no pun intended, it actually was a very honorable thing that they were doing, basically paying these guys for really not doing any live shows. I'm like, good for you guys, but eventually that plan is not going to really work out in the end, because they're not making any money. So what are they going to do? Their TV contracts are pretty much up. So what's going to happen here? And then the story of them, apparently they've been trying to sell their live video libraries for at least a couple of years, maybe less than that. So this whole thing about the company on the verge of basically disappearing, it's been around for a while, and the pandemic pretty much sped that up. From what I've just been reading and trying to understand, I do think that if anything, I can see, I guess this is now just reaching that point of where it's going to go from here, because it's just more continuing of what I've been reading and just how I think what possibly could happen. And Brian kind of joked about it. Well, I don't know if it really was a joke, but just saying, making this an NXT 2.0. In a way, it kind of is. This is the end of what we've known about Ring of Honor. It's the end of Ring of Honor 1.0. Joking as like a messed up my mask here because I've got an itch. This is the end of Ring of Honor as we've known it, but I can actually see it to the point where I can actually see Tony Khan actually not only purchasing the library, but probably purchasing the Ring of Honor itself to the point where it could actually be AEW's NXT, where it could be their NXT 2.0. I mean, a good portion of their roster is alumni of Ring of Honor: CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, Adam Cole. They have most of their names are in AEW, and honestly, without Ring of Honor, there would be no AEW, because all was it All In?
All In.
Yeah.
It was
So,
co-produced
in a way,
with the Ring of Honor people. Yeah.
So yeah, without Ring of Honor, there would be no AEW to begin with. So I could just basically see Tony Khan purchasing it and basically putting his money behind it and rebranding it as basically what their NXT could be, to the point where they can use it to make what's the word? They could be their developmental brand, but still put enough money in it but that they can still do what Ring of Honor did beforehand, just under the eyes of Tony Khan.
All right. Since you're sort of alluding to it now, there's still a lot that can be said about Ring of Honor as a whole. So let's divide this up into two different categories. If Ring of Honor closes, and if Ring of Honor ends up returning during the latter portions of the year in 2022. If Ring of Honor does close, let's talk a little bit more about what Ring of Honor's legacy will be. What, in your mind, Tarek, you already talked a little bit about it, so I'm going to kick it over to Brian first. What, in your view, if this is the end for Ring of Honor, what, in your view, is going to be the legacy that Ring of Honor leaves behind? And do you have any particular special memories about Ring of Honor?
The big thing about Ring of Honor is in the mid-2000s, they had the talent that we are seeing on the TV now. Okay, they had the CM Punks, they had the Bryan Danielsons, they had the Adam Coles, they had the Kevin Owenses, they had the Sami Zayns, they had Seth Rollins. It's like all
they had Jimmy Jacobs.
You could say that 75% of the main players, at least 75% of the main players in all of wrestling today started out in ROH. So it's like that's the legacy they leave behind. ROH was the beginning stage of all or most of the top talent in the major companies that you see today. And that was, we're talking in a joking and like saying like ROH could be the developmental brand for AEW, or they could turn into an ROH 2.0, but they've basically been the developmental brand to begin with.
Not officially. I'm just talking about it as officially.
Well, I mean, like unofficially, it's already been.
I think I see where both of you are coming from with this. Yeah.
Yeah, unofficially.
I'll save my comments in just a moment.
Yeah, unofficially, it's been the development brand for all or most of the top players in the wrestling business since the mid 2000s. So I mean, like technically, it's already there. And
It's
that's
more like just
that's basically the legacy that it gives. That was the first summer of punk that you don't get July of 2011. You don't get July 2011 without that summer in ROH. That's just facts. Samoa Joe, you don't get Samoa Joe what he's accomplished. You don't get Kevin Owens. You don't get Sami Zayn without ROH. ROH, whether it might be going out with a whimper, but it was a you don't have what you have now without it.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I'm just basically like you're saying that it was basically the developmental for the big players of basically all of the mainstay of wrestling, AEW, WWE specifically. I was just basically saying it's gonna just be more that stepping stone for I could see AEW just taking it full hand and just be like, okay, instead of just basically being all around bringing the future big players, this will be the start for the big players for particularly AEW. I mean, let me put it if WWE got their hands on the library of Ring of Honor, all we're ever gonna get is just basically the rise and fall of Ring of Honor, the basically just documentaries about it. We're not I could see like someone like Tony Khan basically, no pun intended, rising from the ashes of what Ring of Honor used to be and basically doing his version of it and using it to make the future stars in AEW.
Yeah, I definitely see what both sides of what the two of you are alluding to here. I was actually thinking about this earlier, and the way I saw it was that Ring of Honor in its prime was one of those companies that needed to be on the cutting edge of professional wrestling. And it seemed like, at least in the modern era, excuse me. Yeah, as I was saying before, it seemed like there was always one company that was sort of on the cutting edge of what wrestling could be, that really tapped into the wrestling fan, the hardcore wrestling fans, like what they really wanted to see. Today, you can kind of say that's AEW. In previous generations, at one point, that was Ring of Honor. And our point, you could case that may have been TNA at a certain point. In a previous era, but even before all that, it was ECW. Something that was cutting edge, something that took risks, an entity that tried something new that was fresh and exciting and cool. And like we were talking about in the main modern era, there were so many modern day stars that were built up and come up in Ring of Honor. All that you just said. So again, I think you pretty much covered most of them. So I'm not going to cover that one more. I personally, as far as the legacy, there's just no shortage of memories and matches that spans throughout its entire history. Again, we've got the Joe versus Punk matches. We've got the matches between Kevin Steen and El Generico. Geez, I feel like there's so many.
Oh, there are.
Yeah. The rise of Bryan Danielson, which I did get the chance to see him before he got joined up with WWE years ago. One of which being at the Hammerstein Ballroom, which was still one of the coolest tag matches I've ever seen in my life. And it was. And I will never forget the first time I ever got to see Bryan Danielson wrestle live was in Edison, New Jersey, during the one Ring of Honor show that I actually assisted and volunteered to do a ring crew with before the show. I came again in case anyone here who has not heard the story yet. Years ago, during Prime Ring of Honor days, I had a contact. I was able to come in and help set up the ring and the sets and take everything down. It was a ton of fun. It was an experience I will never ever forget. And I actually met Cesaro there.
Jealous.
I know. I met the guy. He was really super cool with everybody. Everyone was still going. He came up to everyone talking. It was like, "Hey guys, hey!" And it was just like, "Okay then." Yeah, everyone was super cool. I got to meet him. I got to meet Chris Hero. I got to meet Necro Butcher. All very cool people. It was a ton of fun. The show itself was great, and I will go on record as saying that Sarah Del Rey is a naturally a very beautiful woman. It does not come across, but she looked like $1 million that night. Just so many memories, and it was one of those things that really I will carry with my fandom forever. I will never forget it. And just that's untamed spirit of independent fun, where just like CM Punk said in his promo after returning to AEW, it really talked about how it felt like a place where professionals could learn their craft and love professional wrestling. And having been one of those guys who helped set up everything up and just being able to take a literal peek behind the curtain, I can say that it is absolutely true. And that whenever I think of Ring of Honor, that's the kind of thing above all else that I will remember forever.
Well said.
Well, that is sort of the negative portion of the sort of Debbie Downer side of things. But for a moment before we wrap up, let's take a look what if Ring of Honor actually holds true to their word? What if Ring of Honor does indeed come back in a new and innovative form? Here's my question to you all. If Ring of Honor returns, what form would you like to see it in? What new things would you like to see them do? Who would you like them to see bring back into the fold here? How would you like to see them live up to their promise of a new fan-focused experience? What can Ring of Honor do for you?
I think the big thing that they need is the problem is Sinclair themselves. Whoever owns Ring of Honor, because the TV contracts that they sign are not good. They never have been good. So it's like having the live shows and all that, fine, good, do your thing. But if you want your company to last after this pandemic, that you've been purging all this money, doing the honorable thing and paying your wrestlers, if you are able to come back, you need a good TV contract.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing you need, because you need a way to make money and make money quick. And that's it. That's your big thing, because first of all, if you're releasing all your contracts, you know that you're not gonna get a lot of your top guys back. You've got some guys who've got loyalty, so they'll probably stick around, but they're gonna shop around. They're free agents. That's what they do. Mm-hmm. If they do come back, it needs to be different than what it was before the pandemic hit, because what they were doing before the pandemic hit was not working. Mm-hmm. They were losing ground quickly. They were not being looked at. Impact was overtaking them like Impact had been taking a shit for the moments before that, but with everything that's been going on with everything that's been going on with Impact and AEW and all that, yeah, the partnership's over, but that doesn't mean that the influx that the AEW stars were giving Impact are gonna leave, because Impact's been putting on good stuff since then. So it's like ROH. I can't tell them what they need to do, but what they were doing before the pandemic happened was not working. So
well, good thing that's not what I asked. What I asked was, what would you want to see happen? What would you like to see to make a more innovative Ring of Honor, a more exciting, fresh Ring of Honor? What would that kind of Ring of Honor look like for you? What would you want to see?
See, that's the issue. Okay, because I would like to see a Ring of Honor that I saw in the late 2000s, in the mid 2000s, late 2000s. Go back to that, because what you've been doing for the last few years has been purging your audience and hasn't been working. So if you want your crowd to come back, treat your product like you were treating it when everybody was in the ring, when everybody was rabid in the Ring of Honor. Just bring that mindset back, because that mindset's been lost over the last few years. Bring it back, and then maybe this new Ring of Honor will work better than what was happening the last few years.
I'll tell you what, I think I've got an idea of how it could be done, and I'm totally on board with that. Fool, before I get on my high horse once again with Ring of Honor, would you like me to expand on my ideas, or would you like to go first?
I think I pretty much, from what I wanted, like with what your initial question was, I think I pretty much made it clear that I kind of want it to still be the place where basically the independent wrestlers who are wanting to really jump onto the television stages of wrestling, for them to really pick up their craft using it from them. But it's again, being the developmental specifically for AEW and having that legacy built onto that, continue on through to AEW, more so than what NXT has been doing to their wrestlers going onto the main roster. Basically, the more successful version of what NXT was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. I can definitely see that. The only thing that sort of gives me pause is, like I mentioned, to me, Ring of Honor was always that kind of company where they were not afraid to take chances and try something new, and to really consume the spirit of the independent scene wrestling at the time. At the time, cutting away from the mold meant pure professional wrestling. This, like the honor rules, the pure title, that sort of thing. That's the kind of thing that made someplace like Ring of Honor special and different. Right now, I feel like the show that's on the cutting edge right now is AEW. So in order to take Ring of Honor into the next level, here's how I would do it, and I'd like to get your opinion on it. If they want to start fresh, I'm going to say, in terms of like TV deals and whatever, double down on streaming services, double down on their YouTube show, make it a regular fixture. We are already seeing this happening, and we've already seen it in the past. AEW is doing it now with Dark and Dark Elevation. NWA was doing it pretty successfully for a time until COVID-19 ended up disrupting everything. The NWA Power, I thought, had its own identity. It was really starting to gain momentum. And even way back in the day, even when during the heyday of Ring of Honor, I remember Chikara of all places ended up having their Chikara podcast a go, where they would have like little mini, either they would have full matches or they would have at least clips of matches from their recent shows to sort of build up hype and review storylines and show promos from and just build up to the next big show. I feel like that's one way they could do it. And then if, depending on how much steam they're able to get and maintain, then maybe they could get some other distribution rights for just something better than what they had, like Brian said. But in terms of roster and presentation, I'm not sure. Like you said, you are at a risk. You're going to lose somebody somewhere, somehow. Again, they've got Danhausen right now. Danhausen's got to go somewhere. Briscoes, now that there's AEW out there, the Briscoes could go somewhere. Dalton Castle, he could go either way. PCO, I'm not sure what his plans are, but he can just roam around. I'm not sure if the major companies are going to pick him up just due to his age, or if he's just going to go through the independent scene once or twice. Excuse me. There are a number of names that may end up getting picked up, but that's okay, because if I would had the pencil, what I would do with Ring of Honor is I would bring in as many new talents as I possibly can. If people want to stick with Ring of Honor and stay loyal or are able to do so, I would hang on to as many people as I could from the best points of Ring of Honor, like your PCOs, like your Danhausens, like your Dalton Castles, like all those guys. If you're able to hang on to them, but also populate your roster with really fresh, newer talent, and just even with very unique presentation and styles, just whatever new thing you can try and do to just stay on the bleeding edge of what professional wrestling fans want, to create your own niche. I think they could do it. I feel like NWA for a time was really on the cusp of doing that. If you think early on during the NWA Power days before pre-COVID, if you think about it, they had Eli Drake, now LA Knight. They had Ricky Starks. They got in freaking Aaron Stevens, for crying out loud. Alone, as their champion, they also have Nick Aldis, who is still excellent, has a lot of untapped potential there. Thunder Rosa came from there, and that was the first time I ever heard of a lot of these people. I suspect that if NWA doesn't have a resurgence, Ring of Honor could absolutely capitalize on that sort of, I guess, sub niche, whatever you want to call it. But then again, that's just the way I see that Ring of Honor can not only come back, but also differentiate themselves from the modern wrestling world right now. Any thoughts on that? Am I crazy or am I onto something?
I like the idea. I just don't know. It's hard to see that kind of thing for ROH working in the long term, because with you've also got you've got AEW, you've got WWE, you've got Impact, you've got MLW, you've got GCW, it's hard. If there's any way it's going to work, I think that your idea is pretty good. But even the fact that they have to take time to they have to take 4 months off at the beginning of the next year just to develop a new strategy. It's going to make it tough to make a return in that kind of. Before AEW and GCW came about, I could see them having a shot. But the issue is it's a little bit crowded in the wrestling scene now. That it's a little bit crowded, and the products are mostly good. So I would love for ROH to be able to come back, differentiate themselves in the way that you made it, and actually make it work. At this point, I'm just skeptical about the operation, and with everything that's going on in the background, all the background noise, it's hard for me to see it working.
How about you, Fool? Do you think am I onto something, or is it just a bunch of nonsense? And be honest, I could be wrong.
I wouldn't go as saying it's nonsense. It's just probably something that would work in the beginning of revitalization, but for the long run, it may not be the best. Like, I'm trying to find the right wording for this. May not be the best strategy to just go for. Yeah, like I said, in the long run, they would have to basically evolve from that. And with what Brian said, with all the other players in the wrestling world, it would probably be hard for them to really stick out as hard. But maybe the best thing is to just trying to find the right. Probably just do like partnerships, and like it could possibly work for some, like if they did partner with someone like NWA, like, since it would be somewhat similar to what they're doing. But yeah, like by themselves, maybe a good way to like revitalize it, but they would need to do something more to keep that boat afloat. But it's not a bad plan. It's actually a very intriguing plan. Like,
yeah.
It's just like, does this work? Like, would this really work for them, keeping their ship afloat? Is it just basic, or is it just a band-aid, throwing a band-aid onto a giant gash?
Yeah, it's like I'm not saying it's a bad plan. In a different landscape, it would probably work. But the landscape for wrestling is very different than it was even a couple years ago. So it's harder to make yourself stand out from the crowd now than it's ever been. So it's because there's legitimate, each company has its own niche now, and ROH used to have that niche, and even in the last couple of years that niche was taken away from them. So it's just it's a good plan, just the plan would be better in a different landscape than the one we have now.
Yeah, fair enough. And there's so many different things that could happen in the next several months. But even if this is the last swan song for Ring of Honor, thank you so much for the memories, and your legacy is going to be one for the history books.
And the legacy is going to live on. With the wrestlers that are in AEW and WWE.
Absolutely.
It's there.
Absolutely. But anyway, those are our thoughts on the matter. And now is where we pitched over to you, our fellow fans. What do you think about what's this Ring of Honor situation? How is it producing? How is it developing, rather? And what are you hoping is going to happen next? Drop us a line all across the internet. We want to hear from you. Facebook posts, Twitter machines, Facebook posts, YouTube comments, Facebook posts, and let's not forget the Twitter machines and the Facebook posts. Twitter machines, you can follow us at ScholarsOW for all the latest episode uploads every single week. And you can also join the conversation on the latest happenings in the professional wrestling world on our personal Twitter accounts. Fool, what's your account? Where can people reach you?
You can reach me. Oh, finally able to take this goddamn mask off. Oh, woo!
Must be warm in there.
Okay. Oh man, with these lights, I was melting under that mask. Woo. You could find me at the Avataric. Man, look at at my hair.
Yeesh. Scholar Brian, where can he reach you?
You can reach me pouring one out for ROH 1.W. 1.0. 1.0. What the hell is 1.W?
The world may
Let's just go with it. Let's just go with it.
ROH 1.0. You can find me at Atomic Beanpole.
And you can catch me watching reruns of ROH 1.W at I'm Robbie Rage. Join in all the fun, join the conversation. It's always fun. But you already knew that because you know who we are. We are the Scholars of Wrestling, and you have just been schooled. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
See you all around the bed.
Happy Halloween!
Happy
Halloween! 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 Happy Halloween! Silver Shamrock.
See you soon, Mr. Wyndham.